What do industry experts know that you should? Stay tuned. Welcome to this week's edition of Note School TV. My name is Joe Varnador, and we are so happy to have you. I am going to bring on our founder and chief visionary officer, Mr. Eddie Speed, here in just a minute. But before I do, I want to just remind you to give us that thumbs up, like the content that you see, and also subscribe and hit that bell notification, right? Bing, and listen. By doing that, you will be notified of when we go live. Remember, every Wednesday at 11:05 Central Time. So again, we do have an amazing guest today. But before we do that, let's go to the news. And here's the news. So this week, we start out with home builder stocks erase almost $30 billion in value in a cold January. So we know that the Federal Open Market Committee, met last week, and big home builders like Toll Brothers and Lennar Homes, well, they lost about $30 billion in market capitalization last year based on, well, the fear, not that we know that the feds didn't raise interest rates last week, but the fear that interest rates will go up at some time in the future. And speaking of more fear, well, lumber, right? As mortgage rates rise, lumber drops 30% in 2 weeks. And they're saying because of some of the heat getting taken out of the U.S. housing market, when it's really just two things. Again, it's fear of the market, the rates going up in the future. And number two, there are still supply chain issues. So guys, to take the fear out of what we do, that's why we love the note space, guys. And that's why we continue to bring you this kind of content and this type of news and stuff that you will not hear on mainstream news outlets as you watch the nightly news, right? That's it for this week. So now it is my pleasure to bring on my friend and chief visionary officer of Note School, Mr. Eddie Speed. How are you, Eddie?
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. How are you?
Well, it was a cold January here in Texas, but maybe not as cold as the home builders stock was. So pretty interesting.
Well, Eddie, again, it's all fear because we know that, rates didn't go up but still there is that. So it's not the fear of missing out. It's just the fear of the future.
Yeah. Joe, we have a guest this week. I loved your opening. We have a guest this week, and I'm going to say that it has 3 B's in this name. And one is two of those is his name.
Right.
And one of those is a man that has dealt in billions in this business. Yeah. So he's been a long friend, a player in the market, and I'm very, very excited to hear his views on where the market opportunity is. And I think you're really going to enjoy it today.
Absolutely.
Bill, we are really excited today. We're going to get to talk about a journey that we've been on in this industry, and a journey that was very different in 2008 than the journey that we seem to be on this time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Right? With distressed assets.
Absolutely. Yes.
So guys, listen, I'm going to drop off and I'm going to let you guys talk a few minutes, and then Eddie, bring me back on at the end, man.
I'll do that. Thank you, Joe. So Bill, let's go back a little bit. I want to give folks a little sense of your resume, kind of how you got started in the business. I made reference to the fact that you've done in excess of $1 billion worth of assets, which is that means experience, and experience sometimes really matters, right?
Right. Right.
So
Well,
talk about your resume a little bit, and then let's talk about the cycle that we've seen and what we're now seeing.
sure. No, absolutely, Eddie. I appreciate it. I got involved in the non-performing mortgage market in the summer of 2008. It was about 3 months before the fall of Lehman Brothers. So the real crash hadn't yet happened, but it was about a year into a large buildup of non-performing loans and a stalled residential real estate market that was oversupplied. And that was a light bulb moment for me. I got a call from an asset manager who had an opportunity to bid on the debt and really name his price. And at the time, there was a huge supply of non-performing debt that banks and private equity firms were trying to get rid of. Much different market than today. But I spent the next 12 years investing in mortgages, non-performing, sub-performing, reperforming, developing a paradigm that would most efficiently work these assets in a market where demand was low and supply was high. Obviously, much different than what we're looking at today, with a real estate market that is way overinflated, very hot, 20% increases in value in 1 year, which is really unheard of and unsustainable, and a lack of supply due in part to government moratoriums on foreclosures and evictions.
Yeah. Pretty wild set of conditions, right?
You want to believe that your future is always going to look like your past, because it would then come with some familiarity that we then can be the soothsayers, that we can predict the market. But what I think you've been in more cycles than I have, is that the future really never does look like the past. It might have images, some similarities, but people keep asking, is there going to be a mortgage crash? Is there going to be a real estate crash? And it's not going to look like what we saw in 2007 to 2009. And it's already not looking like it. In many ways, from a cyclical point of view, I think we're seeing this beginning of this year, feeling like a 2007-ish time, but we still aren't seeing a buildup of inventory. So that's one big major difference. There's still a lot more buyers than sellers right now.
Yeah, it's every cycle's been different. My first experience with non-performing note to any measurable degree was in 1986, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple of years after that, they actually formed a government entity called the Resolution Trust Corporation,
Right.
RTC, and that was my first experience in NPLs, non-performing loans.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, in the late 90s. It was a big cycle again, and most people don't even realize that. So sometimes there's a big inventory of non-performing notes because of disruption in the mortgage industry, but it doesn't mean the same. But I've never, we were buying notes. I can remember buying notes, Bill, in the after 2008, after that cycle, and we were buying them for 20 cents on the dollar. And people think,
right.
Oh my God, well, you didn't make 80% profit.
No.
Because the real estate was dropping like a knife.
Right.
And so you were buying cheap, but it also meant in every situation, Bill, you had to go all the way through the foreclosure and then take the property and go sell the property in a problematic market. Whereas now we have a lot of the loans, call it more than 50%, are equitable delinquent notes. Talk about that.
Yeah, you're seeing with the rise in property values, you're not seeing even those borrowers that are severely delinquent. Believe it or not, I'm still buying non-performing loans this year that were defaults from the last mortgage crisis in 2009. Literally stuff that's been in default for over 10 years. States like New York, or stuff that just got one thing or another that happened. And that stuff, with the rise in real estate values, you have a past due balance that's building up on top of the principal balance, and it's still in the equity. Whereas back in 2007, property values dropped overnight, and everyone was upside down.
Yeah.
So in today's market, you've got to figure out how to find your arbitrage within the industry conditions, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of what we've seen is like stuff where you looks like you're paying a large percentage of UPB, but when you compare it to the value of the underlying collateral that is increased so much, as well as the buildup of past due debt, what we now call the total debt, you're still at a severe discount to both the underlying collateral and total debt. And so it's changed our paradigm for the kind of the deals that we look for. We look for those hairier deals that still have equity.
Yeah, I'm gonna talk with my hands here in a minute, because I'm gonna kind of draw a scale, hopefully that'll make sense.
Yeah.
But first of all, to make sure the audience is clear, Bill and I are talking about loans that he and I and people within the industry would call these legacy loans.
Mhm.
These were loans that were delinquent before the virus. Pretty much all the assets that we've worked on in the past many months, and I'm sure you too, Bill.
Yeah.
These were all legacy loans. So the loans that have gotten delinquent as a result of the virus, we haven't even gotten to that pile yet.
That's correct.
And by the way, there's 2 million of those.
That's right.
I mean, like this thing has a tail to it, a pretty
That's
long tail. But right now we're working on a pile of these legacy loans, and Bill and I were talking about and Joe, we're talking about it before we started today. And, like right now we sort of have an industry secret. Like a lot of people that don't really know that this market exists. I mean, we look at a hot real estate market and we think there's no inefficiency. And there's a tremendous inefficiency in the mortgage side right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me use my hands, Bill.
Go for it.
All right. So we have an unpaid balance. That's the principal amount that somebody owes. And this loan is costing, say, 90% of that number. That doesn't seem like a bargain. Who would buy a non-performing note at 90 cents on the dollar? But 90% of what? 90% of the unpaid balance. Now you mentioned accruals, right? This is back interest and payments and expenses, taxes and insurance. And that's a number that's bumped up, that's in excess of what the principal balance is, right?
Correct.
Now we're down to a new term, which a lot of industry people call the legal balance. And that legal balance is a good bit higher than the unpaid balance. But here's another interesting number. The property's worth this. It's higher than the legal balance. So let me put a circle around it. Let's just say a property is worth 200 grand, just a nice round number. The legal balance is, say, 170. The unpaid balance is 120, and you bought that asset for 110. Well, if you paid 110 and you get paid off at 170, that's a pretty good bump, right, Bill?
That's exactly right. That's and there's a lot of people are not realizing that total debt is recoverable. They just look at it as a percentage of your unpaid principal balance. But all of that, as long as it's properly accounted for by the servicer, and a lot of these loans will be well serviced, total debt of AKA legal balance is really the number that matters.
Yeah. This is sort of the industry secret. And I bet you're wondering why we would be on a TV show saying a secret, right? Bill, I don't know how many assets you've bought in your life. Your resume chokes a horse. You've bought. You represented a sort of a New York fund, been a partner with them. That was how you raised the money. Mm-hmm. So you dealt with Wall Street money and Wall Street level players. But I don't know how many assets you bought. Is it 10,000?
Under that, several thousand. What's interesting is that this is a market that when you do the math, you can spend $1 billion very quickly with not a lot of assets.
Average asset probably is in the 150 range.
Yeah, $150,000 to $200,000 acquisition purchase price. But then you start to throw in some jumbos. We on average have spent from 2010 till about 2016, we'd buy about 10 million a month. So about 100 to 150 million a year when there was more supply and we had really could bring good assets in consistently for that 5, 6, 7 year period from since the last crash. It's been a lot tougher market since then. A lot of money, private equity money, went in the market, and so we scaled back on what we could purchase. More like 30 to 50 million. But we're talking thousands of assets. I don't think I've quite passed the 10,000 mark yet.
I wanted to give people a sense that in your tenure in this business, now almost 15 years, you've not bought 10,000 assets.
Correct.
And spend $100 million a year.
Correct.
Right? There was a window we couldn't spend that much because there wasn't that much available. We're now moving into a window where that's possible.
Right.
There is 500,000 loans that are legacy loans.
That's right.
So guys, people say, well, how deep is the water? Let me just tell you, it's honestly, for the people that are playing in the market, it's as deep as the ocean. Mm-hmm. Bill, it's been a dry spell since we could say that.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And like you said, right now the play is those 500,000 legacy loans. A lot of them that were at the end of a foreclosure process and then just got totally stopped and halted and by COVID for 2 years. Yeah. A lot of that's what's flushing out now. We haven't even started to look at the 1.5 million to 2 million new defaults. A lot of those that have come out of these forbearance programs without a plan in place. That's what the servicers will deal with this year. And I think that'll be our opportunity for next year.
That's it. Bill, I want to do this. We're going to have a commercial. Note School is our sponsor, and Note School has a one-day class. And part of that one-day class, it goes through the waterfall of this non-performing note cycle. And so let's hear from Note School about its one-day class, and we'll be back in a minute.
Well, hello, everyone. It is Brian with the teaching team here at Note School, and I'm excited that I get to be the one to invite you to the upcoming Gold in Notes class. That's right. It is a one-day deeper dive class that we call Gold in Notes because of how valuable this time spent is. This is a full day that we really get to dig into the nitty-gritty, the whole world of creative financing, not just how to acquire more deals, how to get access to more capital, how to defer a lot of the taxes for us as well as for the sellers that we're talking to, and really learn how to create your own notes. And really, once you learn how to create your own notes, this is really where we spend an entire afternoon really pulling back the curtain on what the note business is, from wholesaling notes, buying and holding performing notes to really build your wealth. I'll even show you a strategy called partials, which is by far the best wealth building tool I've ever seen in the real estate space. And we're definitely going to spend some time talking about non-performing notes, which is by far the biggest opportunity in today's marketplace, solely because of the events that have happened over the past couple of years. This is when people are not paying their mortgages, and we're going to make a lot of big money from these bad debts, and we're going to help a lot of people get a second chance. It's an absolutely fantastic day. Come spend a day really dig in and discover a lot of this stuff so that you too can start building your wealth. It's a day meant to really be engaging. Bring your questions, bring your comments, bring your business problems, and we will see you there.
Yeah. So, Bill, as you know, 20 years ago, I built a school because I realized I could do a lot of business with people if I taught them something, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You really can't do this well if you don't know something. And it's funny, like a lot of the things that we're teaching now seem contrary because we've never been able to teach it this way in the past, right? In years past, we always had to teach somebody how do you go dealt with foreclosed properties. You're going to get the property back. There may be code enforcement issues. There may be other things. And now all of a sudden, like, what in the world? You got a situation where, most of the time now you're foreclosing and you don't get the property.
Right. That's right. A lot of stuff goes third party if you do take it to foreclosure sale. But the other thing that this allows for me to do, and it goes to my paradigm when we got into it, a decade ago, is that we get to modify people. We get to keep people in their homes, and if somebody can afford to stay there, and the bank is going to put them through quite a bit, and we as private investors can maybe bend a few rules. As long as they can afford to make a payment, let's make that happen. And then you've got a cash flow for life. If you've helped someone save their home, you don't know how many people I still get Christmas cards from on a yearly basis. I met them one time 7 years ago and modified their house. So there's a lot of different opportunities that open up as a result of the current market conditions.
And you're able to do that because, remember, you bought it at less than the principal that was owed.
Correct.
But you're modifying the legal balance.
Correct.
Which is much higher.
That's correct. We call it capitalizing the balance into a modification, right? So you have to still put them through the process of confirming they actually have the ability to repay.
Yeah.
But sometimes people make a living and they get cash supplements, they have family members helping out. A bank will not consider that in a loan modification consideration. We will do what we have to, as long as we know the borrower has the ability to repay. And so you take a 90%, like your hand elevation, you bought it at this, UPB was here, but the total debt was here. So now you make the new UPB there with your modification, and you've got a reperforming loan with much upside. And that's obviously just one of the many ways that you can work in today's market.
So Bill, obviously you can't deploy $100 million a year and not deal with good legal and compliance advice. But somebody may be watching that says, can you legally do that?
Yes, absolutely. The modification process where you capitalize into a new balance, and you're either raising anytime you're raising the rate, changing the balance, it is a loan origination event. So it has to be overseen by a licensed loan originator, but most loan servicers are licensed loan originators as well. So you can use their license or consult with a good MLO and legal team. Make sure you do everything by the book, but it's absolutely within bounds to do that.
Right. All right. I want to get a little bit of your market view. How you see things. We've talked about this waterfall of about 500,000 of these loans, which is, I believe, what you and I are going to spend a lot of the year in opportunity.
Right.
Then we have a inventory behind us. I read a report the other day. There's 2,039,000 loans that are probably headed for a notice of default this year, Bill. Now, that doesn't mean they're all going to be get sold as a non-performing note. It doesn't mean they're all going to be in foreclosure, but we're not out of inventory when we work through these legacy loans, right?
That's correct. No, absolutely. What you'll see, if I have to be a predictor of the mortgage market this year, is you're just going to start to hear about significant percentage upticks in new foreclosures and new defaults. It's going to look scarier than it actually is because you're starting from such a low number. So if you just increase, if you go from 1,000 to 2,000, it's 100% increase in new filings. So it's going to look worse than it is, which will spook some people. But the real problem, I think, where we're going to start to see this all flesh out is at the loan servicers. They're not going to have the capacity to handle all the new defaults that are coming out of these forbearance programs. I hear it. I know some servicers have doubled and tripled their staff, and the rest of them can't find staff to actually bring on. And so we'll start to see it bottle up there, which is where that new set of 1.5 million loans, I think, will trade closer to the end of this year in large chunks to some of our bigger competitors, and then they'll funnel their way down to us. For now, there's plenty to do with the legacy loans. It's a massive addressable market. At any given time, 500,000 loans is a couple $100 billion worth of debt. So you only need a slight sliver of that to really take the market share necessary for whatever your deployment is, whether you want to invest 100,000 or 100 million, both can play in this market.
To give people a sense that of how big we're talking about, after 2008, which became a 6 or 8 year run in the biggest foreclosure market, REO properties and stuff that had been since the Great Depression. Do you know that they only traded about 5 million houses?
Wow.
And we're talking about 1 million here and 1 million, it's so like, this is like a super big market in front of us. One thing I was going to ask you, Bill, and you brought up a great point, and that is the market built efficiency after 2008 in foreclosure management processes. There were vendors that were just really great at it and dealt in magnum numbers. They could manage foreclosures. A lot of those companies have kind of disassembled, right? And people say, well, is that good or is that bad? Well, the hedge funds that could play at the mega billion-dollar levels were reliant on these management processes being in place that they didn't have to do it. Right. Now, all of a sudden, they're disassembled, and that means that they're going to find inefficiency, and inefficiency is going to mean liquidation.
That's right.
And those liquidations are going to fall even down to the hands of a much smaller operator because they can do things the big guys can't do because they're not handling as many assets.
That's absolutely right. And that's how, and that we're going to see that. Already a lot of what I'm seeing is the tails. This is what I buy. This is what I focus on because, one man's problem is another man's gold. And a lot of these guys have been sitting on stuff for 5 years. They're looking to close up funds and they're not ready to wait anymore. I mean, anecdotally, I've got cases from December and January of this year, case examples, either a New York Wall Street fund that needed to close the last 3 assets of $1 billion fund and had to close by December 31st. So, that's a great buying opportunity for us.
Yeah.
Or a private equity firm that was buying something that you would think is in the money, but doesn't want to risk owning the real estate because they were just they were clipping a coupon. Once the loan went bad, they don't want to own real estate. They don't want to manage inventory. So they're even willing to take a little bit of a discount just to get out of that. So those opportunities will exist. And I'm excited for the year ahead.
So a tail is essentially just the remaining back end of a portfolio that hasn't gotten moved yet.
That's correct. And in many cases, you've got to understand the asset manager we're sitting across from, he's already made all the profits in that portfolio. So all his job is, in order to get him paid and his investors paid, is to finish the portfolio. So that's the best situation for us to buy into because they're not as price dependent. They're surety of close dependent.
That's great. Joe Varnador, maybe you can rejoin us.
Well, yeah, man. Great show, guys. Lot of information for these folks. And, it is an amazing time, right? I mean, we live in a crazy time with real estate on fire, like you're saying. And then we've got the underbelly here as well, which, the news doesn't kind of share with most people. But this is as we said in the beginning, you've got to learn this part of the business. And it can be very profitable for you. And, there is an opportunity to help others as well. And I don't know I know you guys are, but you guys that are watching today, I know that's, you got to be benevolent to folks that aren't as, lucky or as we are at some point. Right. So anyway, I love that. I love what you guys are talking about and NPLs, non-performing loans, guys, it's a thing for sure.
Well, Bill, we're so blessed to have you. You've done well for the industry, as Joe said, right? You've been a good representation. We feel like we have a circle of people, kind of a a group within us that we've done a lot of things together. We've been to a lot of events. We've worked together in various ways over the years, and you've always represented the industry in the best of lights. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Your insights as to where the market is and where the opportunity is that most people don't see are crazy valuable. So thank you for sharing those.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I've learned a lot from you and your programs. And I feel the same for you. You feel like you're a mentor to me as well. So thank you for saying that, though, Eddie. Thanks.
All right. Joe, take us out.
All right, guys. So I know that many of you are going to have questions about, well, Bill, Eddie, Joe, how do I proceed? How do I move forward with learning the non-performing loan space? And the first step that you will want to take is to attend one of Note School's one-day classes, guys. We are going to, as they say, crack the code and pull back the curtain on how you can get into this part of the business. And guys, it's certainly what you do know and how you work these loans out that are going to mean a whole lot to you and the folks that you're working with. So, guys, how do you find out more? How do you learn more? How do you connect with us? noteschool.com/TV. Again, noteschool.com/TV. And we would love to have a conversation with you about how you move forward and how you can participate in this market cycle that, well, we feel, Bill, Eddie, and other folks in the industry, it's going to be around for the next 2 to 3 years anyway. So remember, noteschool.com/TV. That's it for this week, folks. Have a great rest of your week. And as we always say, we will see you on the other side.